everyone, and most importantly, Merry Christmas to those who celebrate! As you could tell from the thumbnail, this video will be my long-awaited drawing process / tutorial. This video will cover all the parts of my drawing process, like sketch, colors, line art, and more. So let's get right into it, starting with setting up the canvas. Alright, so to first set up the canvas, I go into settings and immediately set it to 300 dpi. I don't have a specific canvas size, just somewhere around 30-ish layers. Cause if your canvas is too small, your art looks crusty. Then, to prevent eye strain, I set the background color to somewhere around the light spectrum, so not completely white, but a lighter color. The canvas is set up, it's time to get sketching. Alright, so after the canvas is all set up, I like to draw these little boxes that basically represent the canvas, and you can make any size you want. Honestly, this stage is all about experimenting and brainstorming. The reason you make these boxes so small is so that you don't focus on all the details and just the overall composition that you might want. After repeating this process a couple times, then choose whichever one you like the best. Then, if you need to, resize your overall canvas, and then I like to resize the little box that you drew to the entire canvas so that it fits. And then, after that's laid out, it's time to start officially sketching. Now that you have your base idea, you can go over it and actually start sketching. Now this means actually going into more detail than the very sloppy first idea, and this will give you an idea of what the actual finished artwork will look like. And remember, you don't always have to limit yourself to one sketch. In this one, I did two because, well, I want to work on doing thinner line art in the future, and I noticed most of my sketches have very thick outlines, so I did a second one with a more thin one to help myself in the future. And also in this stage, if your piece is going to have a background, then don't be afraid to lay out what you want for it. Now, after I'm done with my sketch, it is time to do the dreaded line art. Now, the line art is pretty self-explanatory. I just go over the sketch with a line art brush, which is basically, for me, just a pencil textured one. And I like to do colored line art personally, so I normally just line in a slightly darker color than what I want the base colors to be. Now, unless the character has uniquely colored eyelashes, I just color it in black on the same layer as the line art for the future, which I will explain shortly. And based on past trauma of drawing on the same layer, I separate my line art into different layers, which usually contain skin, facial features, eyes, hair, and clothes. And then, it is time to move on to the very tedious base colors. Now, remember when I said my line art is all in different layers? Yeah, well, that becomes a problem during base colors since all the line art is in different layers, all the gaps are not filled in, so I cannot just bucket tool the entire thing. Well, to solve this issue, I basically outline the area I want to color in the color that I want it to be, and then just bucket fill that area. Oh, and specifically for the eyes, the way I color it is in 3 parts. Basically, the middle part is the color that I mainly want it to be, the bottom is the lighter color, and then the darkest is the top. And after all the base colors are laid out, I go in with an airbrush to airbrush in some blush on the skin. I put on the cheeks, nose, elbows, and eyelids. And then for the hair, where the hair is closer to the face, I airbrush in the skin color. I don't know, it just looks fun, translucent. And then at the ends of the hair, I do a lighter color of the base hair color. Now that the base colors are finally done, it is time to move on to shading. Alright, so the first thing you want to do when shading is to decide on a light source. However, this artwork of mine is not the best demonstration of that since I was working very late into the night on this and was way too lazy to do that. But I hope that you can see in my other pieces where the light source is coming from. And I did a little demonstration to show what my steps for shading is, so here it is right now. First thing I do is do the base shading, and then something important that I do is set that layer to multiply. It just makes it more saturated and I think it looks better in general. Then I go in with an airbrush and airbrush in some blue inside of the shadow to make it pop a bit. Then I use a medium airbrush to basically outline the shadow in kind of an orangish color. Then, to soften the edges a bit, I erase with a soft airbrush along the edges a tiny bit. Now these steps can be applied to all of my shading, like skin, hair, clothes, etc. You just have to change up the colors in which you do them in. Also, in this artwork, as I said, I was very tired doing it, so I forgot the outline stage, but in most of my other pieces I do it. Now that the shading is over with, it is time to move on to rendering. This is probably my favorite stage of my drawing process, as it's mostly just highlights, but I'll go over where I do them. First, the way I do the eyes is as follows. First, I set the eyelash liner to alpha lock, and airbrush in some desaturated pink/brown colors onto the edges of the eyelashes. Then I alpha lock the eyeball line art layer and then airbrush a lighter version of its original line art onto the bottom half of that line art. Now we get to do the highlights. To use the concept of a straight line down the eye area, which can be used as a guide for where to put the highlights on the eyelid, cheeks, and eyelashes. I do a little squiggly line of light brown on the eyelash, and then for the eyelid and cheek, I do the same kind of squiggly line but with white. Then, I make a clipping layer for the eyeball's base colors, and airbrush a lighter version of the base color at the very bottom of the eyeball. Then I set that layer to add and then adjust the opacity to my liking. Then for the highlights inside of the eye, I basically just do little angled ovals of white and a variation of the color of the eyeball. All in all, to render the eye area, I color the line art of the eyelashes and eyeball, then use that line method to do highlights for the eyelashes and eyelids plus cheek, then airbrush in that lighter color and set it to add at the bottom of the eyeball, then do the highlights inside of the eyeball with white and a variation of the base color. Then I basically add those little white highlights to anywhere on the body with blush, or anything with that shiny kind of texture. And of course, don't forget that shiny hair. The way I do the hair highlights are actually fairly simple. I just do those little squiggly lines around where the hair has pretty big arcs, and mainly near the bangs. But I just do those little squigglies and make them a bit longer near the edge of the hair. And of course, I also mess around with the color and opacity of these highlights just to experiment with what I like the best. After the hair is done, that about concludes the rendering stage, which means we're going into the final part, which is polishing. Now, a warning for this final stage. For this step, you have to merge all of your character layers together, which means base color, line art, shading, highlights, everything. And I know that doing such a permanent change is very stressful, so just in case, duplicate your canvas, and then merge them in the second copy so you always have a backup. But after you do that, now we can move on to polishing. Alright, now that all our layers are merged down, to further show a clear light source, I like to go in with an airbrush and use a clipping layer. Go ahead and lightly airbrush onto the character the color of the lighting, whether it be white, yellow, pink, blue, whatever. And then once I'm done, I set that layer to add and then adjust the opacity of it to my liking. Then I create another clipping layer and airbrush in some shadows where the character is farthest from the light. Then send that to multiply and then once again adjust the opacity. Some other finishing touches I do after that are like adding little sparkles around the canvas. And of course, do not forget this, sign your artwork. But after that, you are finally finished. Alright, that is the end of the tutorial, and I hope you all enjoyed, and here is a speed paint of the artwork that I did. You may have noticed I didn't cover doing a background, as most of my backgrounds are just gradients. Also, I couldn't explain them if I wanted to, because I don't really know how to make them either. And as always, if you have any questions or anything that I didn't explain, then please comment down below and I can try to explain it. Oh, and of course, happy holidays! I hope that this very poorly made tutorial served as a nice gift for you guys. Also, I think it's really interesting because for some reason this artwork only took about 7 to 8 hours, whereas most of mine will usually take about like 10 to 13, so that was pretty weird. But hey, I guess you first get good and then you get quicker. Also, a little bit of extra advice. After each of these stages, if one of your friends or a family member of yours is also an artist, then ask them for feedback. Thankfully, I'm lucky enough that my mom is actually a professional artist, so I can ask her for feedback on like anatomy, proportions, or composition. But make sure to ask people in the earlier stages of drawing if it's okay, because it is much harder to change things when you are already into the base colors. Anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed, hopefully, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!